Then he brought the bowl of the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the bowl of the sin offering and killed it. Grace and peace to the body. Hope everybody had a good Christmas and a good time. This is going to be, this definitely was not planned. Um, Let me give some thoughts on the debate that Chris Lucas and Josh Music had on Daniel chapter 9. And I want to mention a couple of things that at the very least hopefully will get people to think um, on this topic. Um, Let me see here. Let me get to Daniel 9. So, if I remember correctly in the debate, I heard, or if not, I've heard from others that Daniel 8 is a shadow and a type. I mean, if we read through the text, we read through the interpretation of the text, there is no shadow. The only way, in my personal opinion, the only way we can find a shadow or a future fulfillment of a prophecy like Daniel 8 is if the New Testament it declares it to be so. Because if we start, now this is my opinion, but if we start uh, saying certain prophecies have a shadow and future fulfillment with no justification from the New Testament, we start to become the private interpreters of prophecy. And we know from the New Testament that is a concern, and many false cults have arisen due to that. Um, so the issue I am seeing um, with this text uh, is here. 77s are decreed about your people in your holy city. So, how do we define your people? Because if the 77s are strictly and only about the Jewish people, then that means this atonement right here, because that's what this is about, the atonement of the Messiah, is only in reference to and only for the Jewish people. Because these 77s are decreed about your people in your holy city to finish the transgression. Now, how do we define the transgression? Daniel 8 talks about something similar, in my opinion. And the little horn here arises because of transgression. And then in the interpretation of that here, there's mention of the transgressors, their transgressions being full, or they're filling the transgressions, which causes the little horn to arise. I think it's verse, yeah. The transgressors have reached their limit. So there is transgression and transgressors here that are talked about. They would be the Jews, in my opinion. And so, in like manner, in my opinion, here the transgression is rejection of Messiah, but also the transgressions that have built up over time. Because you know, when we look here in verse 25, in troubled time, I think a lot of people assume that that only refers to those from the outside attacking Israel. But I think it's more than that. I think it's not just that, but it's also Israel themselves being wicked and not doing as they are supposed to. I think it's in uh, uh, Haggai or Nahum where this is talked about, where God has the prophet talk to the Jews and say, "Look, you're building these houses for yourself, but where's my house? talking about their sluggishness and their lack of desire for the Lord. And also in chapter 11, it talks about this where um, it says here in verse 14, in those times many shall arise against the king of the south, and the violent among your own people. Now, your own people, that is referring to the Jews, shall lift themselves up in order to fulfill the vision, but they shall fail. These would be wicked Jews who are disobedient and are filling up transgressions. It's also talked about here in verse um, man, kind of like Winnie the Pooh. Think. Is it verse 30? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So he shall turn back and pay attention to those who forsake the holy covenant. That would be the Jews right there again. Also acting wickedly and depraved. And so, in some real sense, right, it has to be referring to the Jews, but is it only referring to the Jews? I don't believe that this, your people, is only and strictly the Jews. And why I believe that's the case is uh, a teaching that some people will call replacement theology, right? I don't think that's an accurate term. I don't think the Jews are replaced, but I think that w- what a true Jew or Israelite is expanded in the new covenant. And I think that's clear through the atonement of Christ, because if we look at this, these transgressions are definitely referring to the Jews, but I think also in a general sense to all of those who are his people through all time, their transgressions, their sins, their iniquities are atoned for, and they are given everlasting righteousness. To show this is the case, let's go, because this is talked about in the exact same manner, in the exact same light in Isaiah 53. And surely we would say that this is referring to both Old Covenant and New Covenant believers. That's a good way to put it. Old Covenant, New Covenant believers. In the New Covenant, those who are in Messiah are going to be the true Israel, because Christ is the true Israel, the only truly begotten Son of God. All right. Who has believed what he has heard from us? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground. He had no form of majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, and acquainted with grief. And as one from when men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. He was pierced for our transgressions. So there's transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. There's iniquities. Okay, remember Daniel 9 talked about the transgressions and iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. There's a there's a everlasting righteousness, I would say, because the only way that all of us and anyone else who decides to believe in the Messiah has true peace, true shalom, is because these transgressions, sins, and iniquities have been dealt with by the Messiah. That is the only way. and with his wounds we are healed. All like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet opened not his mouth, like a lamb that is led to the slaughter. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, okay, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be counted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sin, there's the sin, of many, and makes intercession for the transgressors. I think that point is pretty clear. Leviticus chapter 16 also uses similar language. Now, what's different about the Day of Atonement as opposed to just the normal sin offerings is the Day of Atonement not only makes atonement, but it cleanses as well. And this is why not to get sidetracked, but this is why the SDA position is so horrendous, is because the Day of Atonement quite literally cleanses. By the blood, it cleanses that which is dirty. And yet, they teach that the blood not only cleanses but also makes dirty, or it's through the blood that the dirt and sin comes through into the holy place, the most holy place. It's wild, and that's how you know somebody is just so. Um, I mean, there could be many factors, right? There could be brainwashing. There could be their whole family is a part of the cult, and so it's very hard to want to reject it because of that. It could be, um, I guess, it could even be a possibly genuine belief in it that it is biblical, but it's because you accept extra canonical material as inspired. But at the end of the day, uh, I think most systems fail because of this. But at the end of the day, it is whatever the scriptures teach on any given topic that's true. And beyond that, we're just going to speculate, create our own man made systems and boxes, and think they're accurate and true, which they're a lot of times are not. But, anyways, let's get to this. So, I believe it is. Dun, 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 dun. And when he has made an end of atoning for the holy place and the tent of meeting and the altar, he shall present the live goat. And Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the iniquities of the people of Israel. Notice the exact same language, Isaiah 53, and similar in Daniel 9, the iniquities of your people and all their transgressions. There it is. We got the iniquities, we got the transgressions, and all their sins. And he shall put them on the head of the goat and send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a man who is in readiness. The goat shall bear all their iniquities on itself to a remote area, and he shall let the goat go free in the wilderness. Verse 30. For on this day shall atonement be made for you, to cleanse you. Ye shall be clean before the Lord from all of your sins. Very clear. This whole atonement is a cleansing process for all those who believe in the Messiah, which they are called your people. Where am I? All right, back to Daniel 9. That is, in my opinion, I only know dispensationalism so well, and so I'm sure there's some that don't fit into this, and those who don't, then obviously I'm not talking about your beliefs or not. But if you split your people, as only Jews, then the Day of Atonement, Isaiah 53, those kind of passages are referring to only the Jews, because these 77s are about that. What I just read, that is what these are about. And so whether you put them in the 60, which we'll get to this, but regardless of if you put it in the 69th week, if you put it in the gap between the 69th and 70th week, or if you put it in the 70th week, it is about the atonement. That is what these 77s are about, not an antichrist figure. Now, your holy city, this I would take to be Jerusalem. And I would take to be 70 AD. And I think there are many dispensationalists who see that. And that is why I've heard some say that there is a shadow and future fulfillment in this. Now, again, the text, let's walk through the text, see if there is a shadow fulfillment in 70 AD and a future fulfillment in 70 AD. This is where I think systems, you know, you can tell if the system is true or not to some degree. Uh, Grace and peace to you, Kelvin. I pray your Christmas and your family, or your Christmas was well and your family are doing good. Uh, do I identify in any particularity? I am staunchly pre-trib, pre-mill. Well, hopefully over time that will change. I'm okay with different eschatological positions, um, but I'm not sure what you're talking about. Do you identify in any particular? Oh, are you saying do I identify in any position? I would be Amil, so I would be by default, by being amillennial, I would be post-trib, post-wrath. All right. So this is an important aspect when talking about the 77s with any dispensationalist, in my personal opinion. And so what we're going to read from here is going to be a laying out of these 77s, which have to do with the atonement. Know therefore and understand. Actually, I'm going to read. I like the KJV better in this part. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. So regardless of where you put that, okay, there is going to be a command or a word to restore and to build Jerusalem. We all put this in the past, in whether it's Cyrus' decree 457, 444, we all understand it is in the past. So from that time unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. So, regardless of where you put this, the events that happen in the 69 weeks or the 69 sevens is a Messiah shall come. Actually, so until the Messiah. I'm going to see how the ESV says that. Okay. Yeah. So 69 weeks will end with the coming of the Messiah. So between the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem until the coming of the Messiah shall be 69 weeks. And in those 69 weeks shall be Jerusalem shall be rebuilt, the wall, and they'll be in troublous times. Okay, I already talked about that a little bit. And after the 69 weeks, so that means it has to be either in a gap, which the text is not mentioning in any way, shape, or form. So I would suggest that there is no gap. But even if there is an understanding where you can have these gaps and still have it be in the first century with the Messiah. But after the 69 weeks that are here mentioned in verse 25, because here in verse 25 it says, unto the Messiah, the Prince, or the ESV words it like this, from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one. So those are the two events that have within them 69 weeks. The commandment to restore and rebuild and the coming of the Messiah. Yeah. And I wonder, uh, well, let's continue. So that's why it says here, unto the Messiah, the Prince shall be 69 weeks. And then it says in troublous times after what is just mentioned, after. So you can even have the Messiah, the Prince, coming within the 69 weeks, right? Him being born and his life. You can have that in the 69 weeks, but it does say here after the 69 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off. So after 69 weeks, the crucifixion happens. Now, I guess you could say a presupposition I bring to this text is that verse 27 recapitulates what verse 26 talks about. So how I understand that is this statement here, after 69 weeks, verse 27 recapitulates that and says 1 week, because what's after the 69 weeks? There's only 1 week left. So it says he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. So the 1 week is after the 69 weeks. So here in verse 26, it says, after 69 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. So verse 27 repeats it, but says it in a different way and adds more information. It says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Let's jump forward to the New Testament. What covenant was confirmed with many for 1 week? And what Messiah was cut off, which caused the confirming, or was part of the confirming. There's only one covenant and one Messiah that the New Testament talks about where this happens. And I think that is pretty clear. So, and it adds more. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Now, that happens in a twofold sense, right? At the death of Messiah, in a very real sense, for all those who are truly saved and born again and believe in Messiah, sacrifice and oblations ceased because the substance came. In a historical sense, in a physical sense, meaning in the temple, a priest comes and literally slaughters a lamb or a goat. That ceased in 70 AD. That is also a fact. And that happened because of the substance coming and becoming the true Lamb of God. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. Okay, so this could be referring more so to the physical 70 AD part, but it is a fact that because of this covenant that was made by the Messiah being cut off, that this happens. And so here in verse 26, it says, "And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary." That is here referring to the overspreading of abominations that makes desolate. He shall make it desolate. This is the destroying of the sanctuary and the city. And the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. So that's right here. The overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, or the end thereof shall be with the flood, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. So it's clearly recapitulated in my personal opinion. Why that is important is because it proves even more so that this after 69 is this content right here happening is in the 1 week. So you could take this 1 week as very literal, or you can take it as stretching out to this 70 AD right here. Either way, however you want to do that. Uh, I'm not here to uh, split hairs over minor details like that. Either way, uh, it's pretty clear that if this is recapitulating, that means that this after refers to this 1 week right here, which means that this covenant that is confirmed, and no, that does not mean that because it takes a week to confirm, that does not mean that it only lasts for 1 week. That is nowhere here in the text. Nowhere do we see uh, it saying that this covenant only lasts and is only valid, only applicable for 1 week. The confirming here, let me bring this up. The confirming here, the gabar, to prevail, to have strength, to be strong, be powerful, be mighty, be great, to be strong, mighty. So this goes to the different tenses and stuff that in the way the words used. To prevail, to make strong, strengthen, to confirm, to give strength, to confirm a covenant, to show oneself mighty, to act proudly toward God. To be strong by implication, to prevail, to exceed, to confirm, be great, be mighty, prevail, put to more strength, strengthen, be strong. So, in no way, shape, or form does it have to refer to the length of it only lasting for 1 week, but instead, we can think of it as Christ's life, right? Christ's ministry, the 3.5 years ministry. Because look here, and for half the week he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. Well, that would be the Messiah being cut off and having nothing. That is what put an end to sacrifice and offering. That right there is that half the week, which is half the week of confirming the covenant. The other half, people will put in different places, but I think it refers to the very literal historical part where the wing of abominations, making desolate, decreed end, being poured out. That is also confirming the covenant for 1 week. Some people would put it through ministry of like in the Acts, the book of Acts talks about it, and they'll put it in different places there. Either way, um, this 1 week is most definitely uh, after 69, which happened in the first century, if you're going off this text. And I don't see in any way, shape, or form, uh, I always thought Amil equals no trib. No. So in the Amil position, it is the tribulation. There's ups and downs in the tribulation for different groups of people that are true believers throughout the two comings. So the tribulation, the millennium happen at the same time. So, like for example, they'll point to, you know, just as an example, I, John, your brother and partner in the tribulation and the kingdom and the patient endurance that are in Jesus Christ. So this tribulation, this kingdom are happening at the exact same time. This is how that right there is all millennial, right there. Uh, yeah, I'd say probably the biggest thing with a gap is I don't see a gap mentioned there, right? Just like when I harp on Adventists with, whatever, Satan being the scapegoat, they can infer from certain texts, like in Jeremiah, I think it's chapter 4, where it talks about the earth being void and desolate, and they link that with Revelation 20, and they make all these connections. They can infer things, but the text is not talking about that or making that connection or saying that even. And so I think a gap is similar to that. That doesn't mean gaps aren't in the text in certain places, but I don't see a gap. But even if there is a gap, um, it does not have that gap does not have to stretch in any way, shape, or form for 2,000 years, right? Because if we go back here, it's not 69 weeks that are decreed about your people, and this is definitely referring to the atonement of Christ on the cross. It is 70 weeks decreed about your people. So that's why ultimately I do not hold to a dispensational understanding of this text. I think ultimately it is untenable through the whole flow of the text. And then if we just say Daniel 8 is a shadow, like the historical Antiochus position is a shadow in the and there is a also a future. Well, how do we determine that? Because is it only part of the 2300 that was shadow? Is it all of it? If it's all of it, then what part was the shadow, right? If we want to say, I guess you could say at the most that a shadow does fulfill that time prophecy. So 2300 was met, but what it shows is that there is an antichrist figure who persecutes the believers. I'm okay with that, but to take it beyond that and to say, well, I've heard dispensationalists say that, well, him being destroyed without hands shows that it's future. It's like, well, okay, that part can be a shadow, right? That still does not mean that the 2300 and the events that are spoken of in there, which is uh, the transgression that makes desolate, giving over the sanctuary, and the host be trampled underfoot by the Antichrist in the goat kingdom, is future. That can simply, if the being destroyed without hands is future, then that means that whoever the Antichrist is in the future will be destroyed by God. That's what that means. That's what we can infer from that. But to use this text to refer to more than that, I think is an abuse of this text. But I guess the the strongest point is going to be in Daniel 11 and 12, right? That's going to be, and I think we all admit Daniel 11 is tough, but I do believe that Daniel 11 flows from Medo Persia to the splitting of the kingdom and to the Greek kingdom. And I think during the Greek kingdom, it goes down till Antiochus here in verse 21. And from 21 to 35 would be Antiochus. And then 36 would be during Christ's time. So 36 onward till chapter 12 would be during Christ's time. And but it's definitely definitely a hard study, that is for sure. But either way, Daniel 9, I don't say gap. So uh no, you're good, man. I don't take your comments as arguing or mean or anything. You're good. Well, um, the the Jews that Christ dealt with for sure. I mean, I could agree with that, but uh, you got to remember the Essenes. If you read 11Q 13, the Essenes most definitely understood that after the 69 weeks, the Messiah would be. Uh, you know, a lot of the times I'll defend them because I think they get, at least lately, they get picked on a lot. But I don't think the Calvinistic system is fully true. I think with any system, there's issues with it. I think they overstretch things like predestination and determining of things. I think the will of man and the will of God is. I think when we create philosophy to answer questions about Scripture, I think we go too far. I think let the Scriptures speak, and beyond that, and when I mean philosophy, I mean either open theism or determinism or whatever. I think those go both tend to go too far because they want their system to be true and fit into the text. I think God determines things, and there are things that probably are not determined, but either way, but um, the Essenes most definitely understood that after the 69, Messiah would atone for the sins of their people, and they quoted Daniel 9:26 in that document, and also other ones from Isaiah and other texts. So there was a group of people, and I'd even go as far as say that these scenes were the keepers and watchers of the oracles back in the Old Covenant times, from the time of Antiochus. Because what's interesting is that the Essenes claimed they had a visionary experience with a being that told them basically to grab these oracles, these documents, and to separate themselves from. At that time, they wouldn't be considered Pharisees and Sadducees, but these wicked Jews. And so, what was interesting is they did that, and about 4 or 5 years before Antiochus came to slaughter the Jews, they had fled from the main group of Jews and were able to keep all those oracles and documents, and that's why we have them today. The document is called 11Q13. Let me write it down for you. 11Q13 is one of the big documents in this scenes, and it is fragmented. And I wish it wasn't fragmented. That would be absolutely amazing. It is an amazing document, and the scenes were, even though the scenes had wrong beliefs, but man, when it come to the Messiah, they were they were getting they understood a lot, which I John the Baptist very well could have been in the scene. Uh, if not, it is what it is. But the scenes had, I wonder if Christ even interacted with these scenes maybe during his. Well, yeah, exactly. When I say his scenes, I mean the Dead Sea Scroll documents. My bad. Yeah, sometimes I use that interchangeably, and I don't really consider or think about that. Some people definitely consider this scene separate from that Qumran community and stuff like that. But yeah, the Dead Sea Scrolls, exactly. Yes, my fault. But yeah, they read that, and there are different translations, obviously, of that. But in the translation, one of the translations I have, um, no, I have not, but I do have his works in my library, and if you give me the source, I'll definitely look that up. What's interesting is that Philo was in Egypt, right? And the Essenes had a temple in Egypt where they had their sacrifices there and everything. And so there definitely could have been some interaction with the Essenes or the Qumran community and Philo, because the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Qumran community. I'm just gonna call them the Essenes. That's what I do. Uh, there is tons of language from the Qumran community, their scrolls in the New Testament. When Christ talks about the sons of darkness and the sons of light, that is Dead Sea Scroll language. They have that language throughout their their writings. Um, the the what do they call it? The righteous one, or yeah, I think it's the righteous one. They talk about that is most likely the Messiah. My personal opinion, they understood the Messiah to be Melchizedek and the Son of God. I mean, they had just a lot of knowledge, a lot of understanding, and I think that is largely due to they were being the keepers of the oracles, and had documents like the testaments of the patriarchs. I think I put the quote in my uh, community page that talks about the Testament of Adam, where Josephus quotes him as from that document, saying that the world would be destroyed once by fire, once by water. Okay, yeah, you keep the door open. Yeah, I'm good. And that, and the Pharisees claimed that the Testament of the Patriarchs documents that the Essenes had were uh, garbage forgeries made up. But what's interesting is that I believe that not only the early church, but also the Pharisees agree that there were documents at some time called the Testament of the Patriarchs, and the Essenes were the only ones who claimed to have had those. Now, in the Qumran Dead Sea Scrolls, we only have, I think, like three or four of them, and from what I understand, there are some from the Middle Ages in the Armenian canon, I believe, and those are claimed by some to be Christian interpolations and anachronistic and all that. But uh, what the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I haven't verified all this yet, but people who I've listened to have said that what we have in the Dead Sea Scrolls, like the Testament of Amaranth and others, is consistent with what is in the Armenian canon from the Middle Ages. So, and they in the story goes from that, the Middle Ages finding is that somebody went to Israel and found the documents in a cave that were the Testament of the Patriarchs, and they brought it back and translated it. Now, nobody knows where those original manuscripts are that were translated or the used and translated in the Middle Ages. But that is interesting that they found them in the cave, if that is true, because that's where we found the Dead Sea Scroll documents. So fascinating stuff. But either way, check out 11Q13. They definitely understood who the Messiah was. And I would not be surprised if a number of Qumran believers followed the Messiah. Like that would not shock me one bit reading their works. And I've read a number of their works here. I mean, I could post pictures of my book and there's a lot of highlights and stuff. But let me see. Where was I at with the text? So it is. I think I made my position pretty clear on this. And so, how do we? I do believe that all these prophecies do link together, and I would say that it is through my years of studies of the Book of Daniel. Uh, Daniel does determine to a large extent what your eschatology looks like, which I always took for granted as an SDA. I always assumed the SDA position was absolutely true, and did not understand that it's because of the Book of Daniel. But it does, to a large extent, determine your position on a lot of things. But you know, where and I do believe these prophecies in chapter 7, 8, 11, 12 are linked together, but how are they linked together? Where are they linked together at, right? And I believe it's largely due to uh, which beast system is being spoken of. And so, like in this one here, all I see is whether you start it in 457 or 444 or 537, um, it starts, verse 25 is happens during the second and third beast. So this content here is about what happens during the second, or the Jew's life during the second and third beast system. Verse 26 and 27 refers to what's happened in the fourth beast system, naturally, because, verse 25, you have the 69, and then verse 26, or wait, in verse 25, you have the 69 weeks and what happens there, which is the building of Jerusalem and the temple and in troublous times. Verse 26 and 27, you have what's after the 69, which is during the time of the fourth beast. So that's another way you can figure out where this can be linked in chapters 7, 8, and 11 and 12. Um, yeah. I thought the debate was really good. I enjoyed it. I like seeing Christians debate and talk in an orderly, graceful manner. It definitely does the heart well. I like seeing that a lot. And I thought that debate was really good. I agree with that 100%. The spirit of the debate alone was God honoring. Um, I rewatched it. Let's see what you said, bro. It went better than I thought, though. I didn't want to know Josh's position because I wanted to test my book and see how fast I could adjust. But yeah. After, yeah, yeah, it was, it was wild. That was wild. It was wild. Uh, I would love to see uh, Olive in a more calm manner walk through the text, because I do not understand her argument where she's saying that the I I don't understand the argument where she says it's gone. I don't get that. So I would love to understand that. I laugh more because that word "gone" is an inside joke in my family, so it's even funnier than what it. Oh man, that's good. That's good stuff. But I would really love to understand how is it gone? I can't comprehend that. Maybe Kelvy, you can explain that more. But I'm gonna be right back. I have to go to the bathroom really bad. Too much coffee. I am back. Yeah. If you go to of the debate or the after show. Oh, okay, yeah. Let me. I'm actually gonna go. I'm gonna check that out. Let's see. Praise. All right, I'm gonna check that out. You said it's the hour and 10 mark. Let's see here. After, no, I don't want to pay monies. All right, let's check this out. All right, let me share this. We'll do. Yeah, we'll share that. All right, let's see. Sharon, let me make sure the volume is up.
At him being a disciple of Polycarp.
All right, let's see.
And even he
All
said,
right, all right, all right. Hold on.
Four. That's not one of the goals. So,
All right, so let's check out what the gone, if we can understand that.
so that's kind of my thing is I'm focused on that, and there's not a good explanation unless you want to say that this prophecy that seems to be important, that seems to be based on jubilee cycles and everything, and jubilee cycles seem to be based on.
And that is actually very important. That it's very clearly that these time prophecies are based on sabbatical and jubilee years. And what's interesting is the Essene calendar had sabbatical and had jubilee years in their calendar. And in 11Q13, they talk about after a certain jubilee, the Messiah is going to come. Well, somebody went through and figured out that they were saying that the Messiah was going to come and be was going to atone for the sins between 31 and 33 AD, which is super fascinating. Side note, but fascinating either way. But it is very important, and they understood that. And I think dispensational dispensationalism takes that for granted at the very least.
This great jubilee of
Sorry, especially when we read Christ's words about setting captives free and giving true rest. The reason why Christians say that Christ is our Sabbath rest is because of this very reason, or at least one of these reasons. This is probably the primary reason. If you remember in Leviticus 16, it says that I'm not going to share it because I don't feel like going through the share screen again. But at the end of the Day of Atonement, what does it say? It says, here we go. Verse 31, it is a Sabbath of solemn rest to you. Okay. We have a solemn Sabbath rest in Messiah because he is the true Day of Atonement. He is the true substance. That's why we rest in him. That's why we have, as Christians, true rest and true peace. It's because this Day of Atonement was fulfilled at the cross, which is being spoken of in Daniel chapter 9, which is based off of Jubilee and cycle and sabbatical years, which is why we can say he came to set captives free and give true rest to those who believe in him, starting in the first century, because the 77s were fulfilled.
debt release and slaves being released, it looks like that whole thing that Jews used to do just for debts and slaves was sort of a hidden prophecy about Christ being filled fuller in Christ. And so it's like it seems like Christ should be center of this prophecy. It looks like in verse 9:24, those things can only be accomplished by Christ, but yet you're having Christ being crucified outside the prophecy. That, I mean, that's one of my.
But it's not though, because it takes place in the 69th week, right?
Okay, I'll let it continue to play, but that statement right there, it is happening in the 69th week. Where do we get that from? Where in the text of Daniel 9 do we get that from? Because it says in verse 25, it says what? It says, for 69 weeks, Jerusalem shall be built with square and moat, but in troublous times. And after that, which is the 69 weeks, after that, an anointed one shall be cut off. Now, some like to play semantics and say, well, it can be in the end of it, all this kind of stuff, but just basic language. Verse 25 talks about the 69 weeks. And then verse 26 says, after that, after what is just said, which is after 69 weeks, the Messiah shall come. Or the Messiah shall be cut off.
No, the word says after. Akar means after. ACHAR means after. So you got 69. What comes akar after 69? 70. That means
No, but
it's
it's in that week though. That is the decree for
no,
that.
it says
right
after.
There though. No, but that's
after.
the decree. No.
What does verse 26 say? Does it say end? Does it say end of the week?
A decree. It's not an interpretation of a decree. That's an actual decree.
Does verse
and secondly,
69
Christ.
Wait. I'm already getting lost. It's an actual decree. What is that referring to? If it's verse 24, well then it's not 69 weeks are decreed. It's 70 weeks are decreed. So yeah, it's an actual decree. If that's what she's talking about, I'm not sure what she's talking about there.
He did not make the covenant for only 1 week. Then that means the covenant ends after a week. No, but then we're going to go back to language.
See, that's another assumption I believe on her part. Where in the text would we see that this covenant in verse 27 is only or lasts for only 1 week, and after that 1 week it's invalid or ends? Where do we see that in the text? Because to make this covenant or to confirm the covenant is not the same thing as to end the covenant in 1 week.
Which
Let me
a
rewind
decree, it was.
Obey me.
It says
right
after.
There though. No, but that's
after.
the decree. No.
What does verse 26 say?
Does it say end? Does it say
end of the week?
A decree. It's not an interpretation of a decree. That's an actual decree.
Does verse
and secondly,
69
Christ, he did not make the covenant for only 1 week. Then that means the covenant ends after a week. No, but then we're going to go back to language. A decree, it was given, and then we can even go to Hosea where it says not my people, and then you want to pull the strings with Daniel 8, but then there's still Daniel.
Okay. Hosea, not my people, Romans chapter 9, right? I think that would prove what I've just said in this video even more, because your people here would be the Jews, but it is also extended to all those who believe throughout the whole new covenant. which is spoken of in Isaiah 53 and also Leviticus chapter 16, which is vitally important because that is the atonement that atones and cleanses all those who are in Messiah. And that only happens if these 77s are fulfilled. It's not 69 sevens, it's 77s.
Daniel 11 and Daniel 12 when the sacrifices cease. And then you say that only Christ can make the sacrifice cease, but then we're going to go to Daniel 11. Is that, I mean, and it's specifically
Okay, now remember my
speaking of the
presentation.
abomination.
In the presentation, I talked about that. I said, verse 30, that's why I made that point about Antiochus and the Romans, because in verse 30, so now in Daniel 11:30, I know what you're doing. You're using verses before 11:30. That was my point. This is about Antiochus. All the early church fathers, even atheists, say this. That's why the atheists, you got to remember, why do the atheists argue that Daniel was written in the 2nd century BC? Can you explain that for me?
Well, because they want to prove that it's false.
Well, what it is the prophecies in Daniel 8 and Daniel 11, all the way up to verse 35, look like they can all be fulfilled by that event. Because by Antiochus Epiphanes, so all the way from Greece conquering Media Persia, all the way up to Antiochus Epiphanes, all that looks like it fits. So they said, "Oh, that must have been written much earlier."
Yeah, so they want to make it.
This is a important point that he is making to her, because if now what I do find fascinating is that the dispensationalists and the SDAs both handle Daniel chapter 8 and 11 and 12 very similarly. They emphasize different parts of the text, and they make different points from it, but they handle the text very similarly. Now we got to ask the question in Daniel 8, Daniel 9, Daniel 11, and 12, all of these desolations and abominations of and destruction, all of this, are they all referring to the same thing? Are there 2 different events, 3 different events? You have to kind of figure that out on your own. I would personally hold to Daniel 8, and then the part she's talking about in Daniel 11 referring to Antiochus. So 8 and 11 are referring to the same thing on the parts that she is talking about. So her argument is a moot point. It's an invalid argument because she's assuming her position when she's arguing against his position on this text. Let me see here. Read a couple of. I think he's getting crucified is literally the break between the 69 and 70, just like he is the actual Sabbath. Yeah, I don't see that in the text, to be honest with you. And he, like I said earlier, his life, he was born in the 69th week. His life, for most part, was during the 69th week, from what I can tell. But it's after the end of the 69th week is when he is crucified and the covenant is strengthened and confirmed for 1 week. That's why I said I presuppose, my presupposition is that verse 27 recapitulates verse 26 and adds more information details to it, which the book of Daniel does a lot. Book of Daniel, I mean, it recapitulates and adds more information with multiple of the beast systems. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Post trib. Yeah. What is odd is Josh tried to say, I just go by KJV. Yeah, that's kind of silly, I think, but it is what it is. Yeah, yeah. If you're gonna make a very detailed argument like that, to say that what KJV was written in what late Middle English, that in late Middle English, uh, after means during. At that point, let's just go back to what the English was translated from and figure it out from there. So yeah, I agree. See, this is where I start to not really become fond of dispensationalism. Is this um, they tend to take these terms in the Bible and take each one, and I'm being very general here, but take each one and say it has a different meaning and referring to different things. So, like, nation of Israel is not the bride of Christ, is not the bride of the church, and or the kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, messianic kingdom. All these things are different, referring to different things, or however they want to do that. I Fred Simmons, grace and peace to you. Generally in Scripture, the giving of a decree, the prophetic time period spoken of begins. Yes. Hippolytus agrees, and almost all commentaries up to 1800 agree that Antiochus and Greece is what. Yes, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I'm sure there are some that not, but they definitely would be a minority. His death happens after the 69. That yes, exactly. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Next verse explains this. Yes, yeah, yeah, exactly. I would even say that verse 27 recapitulates verse 26 and gives us more detailed information. I walked through that a little earlier. How can you break it up? Starting is the decree to notice when he arrives at the end of the 69 Yes. I mean, even to be gracious and say that we can break it up into three sections, because it is fascinating, right? That you can draw many things from why the text says 7 sevens, 62 sevens, and 1 7. You can draw all these different things from that, and that's fine and dandy. But even if we were to say, okay, there's gaps in each one, it still is ending in the first century. So regardless of how you have gaps, it still has to end in the first century, and the 70th week has to be fulfilled in the first century because it has to do with the atonement of Christ. Yes, this is a very inconsistent and weak point of hers. I would say is Daniel 8:22, using that. Irenaeus and Justin taught future 70th week. Eusebius rejected the view and was Amil. In my opinion, it was too close to describe Rome. Well, you mean Rome at that time, right? Because I'm sure you probably believe a revived Roman state is what it's referring to in the future, right? Maybe, possibly, I don't know. Kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven. Yes, same thing. My personal opinion. I mean, yes, that's possible. What I would suggest is, if anybody believes that, to be very cautious and careful, because do the time. So if we're talking about time prophecy, do the times that are ascribed to a specific prophecy, do those repeat as well? Or is it just the general, there's an antichrist figure that persecutes the true believers, that repeats? There's a huge difference between those two. All right. I'm getting distracted. Let's continue.
It has to be 150 BC because there's no way Daniel could predict all that so accurately. And that's what
but see, we don't. Yes, but you see, okay. So would you agree? Okay, and I know that you would agree because I mean that to me is not a good enough a reason to say that it's not speaking about the Antichrist. See, that's not sufficient enough because the atheists they even come after certain books of the Bible. They come after all books of the Bible. And
you know who originally did that, though, right? Do you know who the first one to attack that position?
I don't know the first one.
Okay, so this is part of the problem too. Porphyry back in 300 AD, right? And that's so Saint Jerome starts to counter Porphyry because Porphyry is this non-believer, and he's like, nah, these prophecies were probably written in the 2nd century BC because they're too accurate. So Saint Jerome and the other Christians back then would argue against him and say, no, you're saying you're attacking the historicity of Daniel because that's the only way you can attack it because no one else.
But there is. Do what, Charles? I'm sorry.
At that point, maybe shoot, my cats are brawling. Maybe at that point, she was more caught up in her emotions and didn't maybe possibly see Chris's point there. And maybe after the fact, she would recognize it more. But I think what Chris is saying is that the prophecy in Daniel 8 is so accurate, detailed and accurate, and clearly refers to Antiochus that Porphyry, to discredit it as inspired from God, said that it was written after the fact. And so to use it, because she's using it to refer to something else. But
what passage are you on?
Daniel 9. No,
Daniel 8 and 11.
Yeah,
we're in the Hebrew, by the way.
Now. But see, here's the thing, though. That's not a sufficient enough a reason because yes, some parts of Daniel is historical. No one can deny that, right? But then you have the historical end of Daniel, and then it goes into the Messiah, right? It prophesies of the Messiah, and then we go to the Antichrist, and you have to at least, and I know that you don't agree with that for Daniel 8, but you at least have to agree with Daniel 11.
Well, see, that's the thing, though.
Well, I mean, Daniel 8 can be a shadow in the sense that it shows how an Antichrist figure acts and behaves and what he does. That doesn't, we don't have to then conclude that Daniel 8, part of it is going to be in the future, as in a quite literal fulfillment of it, because it's pretty clear from the prophecy that it is referring to the goat, and the goat is clearly defined in the definition as Greece. And so at the most, what we can say is that it shows that a future Antichrist will behave in a similar, but not necessarily in the exact same manner. So that does not prove our point in any way, in my opinion.
You're going against all the early church fathers and everybody.
No, it's not everybody. It's not. No, I just read an early church.
Most of them thought Antiochus Epiphanes fulfilled it, and that was their argument against non-believers that thought the Bible was not
true. In fact,
we can go
to praise. What's the name of that guy that I was telling you about? Is Hippolytus or whatever? I'm so bad.
Yeah, Hippolytus, right?
Is Hippolytus, and okay, so he was a disciple of Irenaeus, right? I'm so bad at names. Okay, and then you had him being a disciple of Polycarp, and even he said the last week of Daniel is future, and a person read it to me. So no, the early church fathers do not agree.
Notice Chris made the point about Daniel 8. She disagreed about Daniel 8 and said, no, the majority of the church fathers do not agree with your position on Daniel 8. And she said, look at how Hippolytus understands Daniel 9. So maybe at that point she just misheard or something. I'm not sure. That's definitely possible. But she definitely, if she did hear him, she ignored his point.
So that's some
No,
type
about
of
Daniel 8
fallacy,
and 11,
Chris.
they do agree. They do agree.
Okay, well then, okay.
Because Jerome wrote about it. Jerome wrote about it.
Well, hey guys, I would
Daniel
say
11 clearly at the very end it goes into the Antichrist. Even Jamie agrees on that one.
Jamie's a Seventh-day Adventist that has the craziest view because he's contradicting himself. He's contradicting his own position.
It gives you
It has to be about.
It gives you a foreshadow of what is to come to help you understand of what the Antichrist is going to be like.
The future, so he has to throw those same verses into the future.
So you think all of Daniel 11?
No, I will say that I don't think they understand Adventist position on this very well. But like I said earlier, that the Adventists and the Dispensationalists do handle the text in a very similar way. They just focus on different parts and come to different conclusions. But I mean, they are both pre-mill, so I mean that definitely means they will in some sense.
11 actually happened?
All of it? Oh yeah, all of it. What part?
And so you think all of Daniel 8 happened as well, right?
Right. Yeah, just like God and Daniel predicted. Yes.
No, that's a false dichotomy. No.
You can make a little clip right there and totally misrepresent her, but when she said no, you could end the clip right there, and it'd be dishonest to do. But I can see some people doing that.
Oh, no. In fact, I can even show you early church fathers that disagree.
Oh, okay. What part of it do you not think happened? Do you not think Greece conquered Media-Persia?
Well, of course that happened. Of course that happened.
Okay. So now, did the Greece kingdom after Alexander died, did it get split up into 4?
Okay, that happened.
Okay. Now, did some ruler arise out of one of those 4 and persecute the Jews?
And persecute the Jews? Yes, that.
Okay.
Yes, that happened.
Right. Yes, almost every historian will agree with that. Okay. Then did Antiochus die without hand? Which means he didn't get murdered. Did he die without hand?
Okay, well, that is debatable. I mean, that is debatable.
It's not. Historians say it did happen. Polybius, Josephus. I mean, you have secular historicists.
Well, just because they want to make it fit, it doesn't mean because there's even a spot in Daniel that says seal up the vision for the time of the end. So that.
So. Oh man, I know he's loving this stuff from her. Okay. The irony of her saying that right there, sealed up for the time of the end. I would love for her to expound upon that and explain that in more detail. Yeah, that's all I'll say for that. I would caution you from being so boastful about what you have and have not studied. Very, very well may be true that you are more learned than everybody you talk to, or most everybody you talk to. But I would be cautious about being boastful, because when you get boastful, you get proud, and your pride will bring you very low. She's just being emotional and does not understand that she shouldn't use these verses for. Yeah, I agree. Hopefully at the very least, when she calmed down, she'll re-listen to it, and maybe it'll help her to reevaluate some of her arguments. And I know for you, Chris, it is definitely hard when you're talking to somebody live not to get caught up in their emotions and react in a similar way. It's very hard not to. So it's going to happen sometimes. What I would like to see is her walking me through Daniel 9 and the method she used to arrive at how she, just walk through the text of Daniel 8 and Daniel 9 and even Daniel 11 and see how she comes to those conclusions. I agree. That's true. Very, very true. Yep. Facts, my man. Facts. Even Jamie. Yeah. I'm talking about them in particular and their dismissive language, which is not justified. That's fine. I don't I don't know them. Just take my words as general advice, nothing more. Again, I don't know your history with them, so I mean, yeah, very, very well could be they mistreated you. I have no clue if they did. It's definitely wrong. Shouldn't be doing that. Back to the video.
That means that no one's gonna understand. Even Isaac Newton, one of the most smartest.
Okay. So I have to say this. I said I was going to say anything, but okay. So when is the time of the end? When will people actually understand these things? There's multiple times of the end in the book of Daniel. Are they all referring to the same time of the end? Even the SDAs have more than one time of the end, right? 1844 being one and the main one. But they would say, they would agree with you and say, yes, in 1844, the time of the end happened. And that is when the understanding came about and we can understand the book of Daniel properly. So I would ask you to give us when the time of the end happens and how you came to that conclusion.
Men to walk the face of the planet even got in on the book of Daniel, and even
That's
he
true.
wouldn't even agree with you, Chris.
Well, the
And
time of the
he-
end does not mean.
And he invented calculus. He invented calculus. Like
I don't care
can
because
barely,
he also
I
recites
count
at the
on my
17th
fingers,
Venice.
Chris. I count on my
I mean, come
fingers,
on
Chris.
now.
And you're a man.
You think the
created
2300 and
calculus.
2300 years? You think the
I have a
2300? You agree with you saying Isaac Newton? So you're Seventh Day Adventist, right?
I'm
I
not
mean, because you
Seventh
think it's
Day
2300
Adventist.
I saw it clicked and you had that Isaac Newton, if I remember correctly, was a historicist and he held to the day year principle. And so I don't think she understands that by referring to Sir Isaac Newton. But okay, so Daniel 8, when is the time of the end? If you're going to talk about the time of the end, Daniel 8, Olive, when is that time of the end? Because what does Daniel 8 say? Yeah. So he came near, or actually verse 18, excuse me. When he had spoken to me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground, but he touched me and made me stand up. He said, behold, I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation, for it refers to the appointed time of the end. When is that, Olive? Because if what is described from verse 20 to 25 is the time of the end, are you saying that this is future? Are you saying that chapter 8, the activity of the little horn in the goat, is future? I'm sure some listening can understand the issues with that. You then have to start handling the text as a Seventh-day Adventist would handle it. That's why they do what they do. And I have the feeling that Olive and Praise don't understand SDA eschatology at all. I don't know that. It's very possible she's just being emotional and just saying stuff and not really thinking. But if this is her position, I mean, how much can she actually rabble against Adventism and their eschatology? Not a whole lot, really. Not a whole lot. I won't even get into that.
I don't do my Sabbath sit-ups and believe that that's going to save me.
Sabbath sit-ups. But Chris, I have a clarification. So, what was the word after and what verse? Because
yes. Since we got Charles and he knows Hebrew, go to verse 26, and right there it says, "And
That's
after
debatable.
3 score." What's that Hebrew word?
Okay, let me pull that up. While you pull that up very quickly, I just wanted to kind of bring something up to Chris, that Chris is okay with accepting that the book of Revelations isn't one historical timeline in which everything has been fulfilled. And I think that we see examples of this all across the Bible, how the Bible, if you start with the interpretation that the Bible is written in a chronological order, then you already don't understand it to the full extent. Because if we're talking about like chronological order, then I mean the book of Job should be in the front of the Bible, and not the book of Genesis, because the book of Job was written first. And I think that even in the book of Revelation, like most people would agree, including you yourself, Chris, that not all of the events described in the book of Revelation are future. Some of them have already been fulfilled. So if you're okay with making that argument for the book of Revelation, I just don't see why you can't even like maybe try to at least.
Okay. Check this out. Let me get my stupid face out of the picture or out of the screen. Look at that. This comment right here. After component 2, which is the 62 weeks, which is 7 is added to that. So it's after, so 69 weeks, the Messiah is cut off. So after 69 weeks, the Messiah is cut off. Okay, in normal language, when you speak, if you're gonna say to somebody, okay, I'm gonna clean my room for 1 hour, and after that, I'm gonna come over to your house and hang out. You're not saying that in the middle or during the end of cleaning up your room, you're going to come over and hang out. You're saying once you are done with that hour of cleaning, because it's going to take you an hour to clean that room, you're going to then come over to your friend's house and hang out. That's what the word after means. Messiah is cut off. This is basically saying, I'm reading Standing for Truth's comment. This is basically saying, hey, start the countdown to 69 weeks. Okay. The end of the second component, which is 69. So that at the end of it, boom, Messiah is cut off. Okay, so is he saying that the 69 is completed and then the 70th starts without saying it? That sounds like that's what he's saying. But like I said at the beginning of my stream, the 77s are decreed about the atonement. I went to Isaiah 53, and I also went to Leviticus 16 to prove this. That the 6 stipulations are about the atonement. It is not 69 weeks are determined or 68 weeks, it's 70 weeks. That means 70 weeks have to be met in order for the atonement for your people to be accomplished. And we know this is why so-called replacement theology is important, because your people there, if you are dispensationalist, your people are only the Jews. That means the atonement is only for the Jewish people. If you hold to so-called replacement theology, I would call it expansion theology, then your people there refers to those who in the new covenant who choose to believe in Messiah. That means that the covenant spoken of in verse 27 is the new covenant that's spoken of by Christ and is confirmed, ratified, strengthened in that last week. And we know that through his life, death, resurrection, and ascension to the right hand of the Father. Very clear. All right.
See how it could be possible that maybe the events described in chapter 9, which is in the middle, and there's things described in chapter 8 and 11 that we would argue kind of explain how he can be the Antichrist, right? Because we're explaining that he is the Antichrist, and then the justification that we're using is verses found in chapter 11 and verses found in chapter 8, which would seem kind of contradictory in terms of the placement of.
So one way you can use to understand what a passage is talking about is looking at parallel or other passages that talk about similar same language. But ultimately, it is the context that determines what a word is talking about. Words have definitions, but they're only given a meaning when they're put into a context. Now, absolutely right. Daniel 8, a little horn, Antichrist figure. I obviously put it into the third beast system, refers to the little horn attacking God's people. Daniel 11, obviously, I believe up to 35, verse 21 to 35 refers to the same little horn in chapter 8. So his point there is really a moot point. He'd have to then establish that it's referring to a future Antichrist and not Antichrist in the past. So the burden is on him for that. I mean, and he'd also have to show, right, that the abomination of desolation spoken of in chapter 8, in chapter 9, in chapter 11, in chapter 12 are referring to the same event. Unless he doesn't hold to that, which then he'd have to show what events those are referring to. Are they each referring to a different event? If so, then that means there's a different little horn or Antichrist type figure in each event, or at least some of them. That means in different time periods they happen as well too. So at the very most, you can say what I said earlier is that Daniel 8 is a shadow only in the sense that it shows what an Antichrist figure will do to God's people. Nothing to do with the time part there, or what kingdom it's referring to when it happens. Let me, all right.
Of the chapters, but that's where I'm saying that you cannot look at the Bible or the way that the Bible is written as being written in a chronological order. There is certain instances where you can do that, but I think when it comes to prophecy, that's not always like the only approach to take. So it's just a lot that you can kind of.
No, I understand it's not written in chronological order, but we still have this thing where if you have the 69 weeks and they get stopped and it says after the 69 weeks.
I do have to say the highlight of the debate, or probably the best part of the debate with Chris and Josh, was this person, pseudonyms, questions at the end. They were super epic, and they definitely brought it like a lighthearted ending to the debate. I thought that was, I don't know anything about that person. I don't know if he did it on purpose or if he didn't mean to do it, that like make that happen. And he was actually asking those kind of questions, which they're hard to understand, but either way is super epic.
Messiah is cut off. Okay, I don't care if it's 1 second after 69 weeks. 1 second after 69, you're going into the 70th week. So if Messiah gets cut off, and that's part of the 70th week, unless you say nope, it's completely outside, which means the 69 are passed, Messiah gets cut off somewhere in the middle, and then on the other side, you have somewhere the 7 years of tribulation starts. So, but Christ is outside the prophecy, so he cannot, he's not part of the 69 weeks.
Right. Yeah. So I said this, but I'll say it again to bolster his point. Verse 25. Know therefore and understand. Let me go to the KJV. I don't like how the ESV words it. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of a commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. So there's the starting point of the 70 weeks. So once that starts, the 70 weeks starts. From the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince, or the coming of the Messiah the Prince, shall be 69 weeks. And this happens in troublous times while the street and the wall are built. Now, I talked about the troublous times, and I believe Daniel 11 talks about those a little bit. Daniel 8 does. And it's like Haggai or Nahum or something where it talks about it as well too. Right? Troublous times do not only refer to those on the outside attacking the Jews, other tribes. It also refers to the activities, the wickedness of the Jews themselves. But notice that verse 25 talks about and explains what happens in the 69 weeks. Because verse 26 says, and after that, that is after what's mentioned in verse 25, so this, after the 69 weeks, the Messiah is cut off. So the Messiah can be born in the 69 weeks and live part of his life in the 69 weeks. That's fine. That's not the issue. The issue is the Messiah is cut off after the ending of the 69 weeks. That's the issue. And that's the text, I think, pretty clearly lays out. And they're missing.
Yeah, no, but that was a decree that was given, though, right there.
But you keep saying it happens inside of 69, and it cannot. That Hebrew word right there says it cannot. That's after. It's that word is after, and it has to happen after.
But Daniel 8, it tells you who the Prince of the Covenant is. It literally tells you who the Prince of the Covenant is.
If you misinterpret it that way, and you're attributing this to...
No, it's not.
I just noticed my mic was muted. I was lecturing myself. Let's see. Okay. All right. I don't remember how much was muted, so let's it doesn't say, I'm reading SFT's comment here. It doesn't say into the 70th week. I addressed that in the first part of this video where I talk about verse 27 recapitulating verse 26. Okay. It says after the second component of the third component time period. Okay, and then he says 7 gap, 62 gap, 1. Now, you can understand gaps in the text if you want to. That still does not mean that the last gap is 2,000 years. You can, and I believe SFT understands that the first set starts with Cyrus. That's perfect, because you can have a gap after that, and then you have the 62 start in wherever, 444, wherever you want. And then that can end, and you can have a gap there, and then still have the Messiah being cut off if you work through the time period. You can still have Messiah cut off in the last one, the last segment, and have the 77 to end and still compensate for gaps. So having a gap theory there still does not prove a 2,000-year gap in the last one, and Messiah being cut off in the 69th week and not the 70th week. Because again, plain language, yeah, I realized that a little too late, unfortunately. I was hollering at myself, really. All right. Because again, go back to the start. 77s are determined, not 69 or 68. 77s are determined for your people. Okay. All right. Let's.
No, like there are many top. No, there are many top Bible scholars that totally disagree.
Well, I completely disagree with them, and so would Saint Jerome, who argued against Porphyry, who tried that
Saint
stuff.
Jerome. Okay. I'm just gonna quote Hippolytus then and look into it. So then my church father kicks your church father's
Hippolytus
ass.
actually agreed with Jerome.
So that just means Hippolytus outdid.
Now I have a different understanding with verse 26 and 27. And I think mine complements the text better, and I think it deals with the he being Antichrist better than other people's position. But either way, the he is clearly whoever's referring to is in the first century. That is a point I wanted to bring out real quick. And if need be, I can go through my position again on verse 26 and 27.
Jerome, and he kicks Jerome's ass. I mean, that's all that it comes down to. Yes,
but if Hippolytus agrees with me on as far as Daniel 8 goes?
Okay, but not on the last
Have you looked
week.
into that?
But not on the last week, though. Not on
the last week. But what about Daniel 8 and 11?
Well, I haven't read him on Daniel 8. I haven't cared to. I just learned about Hippolytus the other day. Isn't that right, Josh?
That's correct.
Josh, yes, he was there. So I haven't read all of his work. Okay, I haven't gotten there yet. So it was just the other day. So I don't know. But on the last week, Hippolytus kicks the ass of Jerome. So that's what it comes down to.
How does he kick the ass? Because can you please explain how you find gaps? Where's your 434?
I think that's a bold statement to say, especially when you have not read Hippolytus or Jerome in their fullest and understand their position on eschatology. Just reading about the 70th week does not tell you everything that they understand about prophecy.
Start.
Okay, so
no.
I'm going to give you an example, Chris. Is a week only one day? Is a week only one day, or is it 7 days?
I thought I already went through this in my presentation twice.
Okay, but you know what? There was arguing going on in the chat, Chris, that I was trying to attend to. So please forgive me.
There's talking about sabbatical cycles. That's why they were in the 70 years of captivity.
Oh, now I heard that, Chris. But now you keep saying after, right?
Notice she doesn't even touch on the sabbatical and jubilee cycles. That is insanely important when understanding the 77s. Because that is quite literally what they are based on, because it shows when Christ comes, he's saying, I am here to fulfill the 77s, basically, when he says, I'm here to give you true rest and set you free. He's saying he is here to fulfill the 77s. That is what he's saying. The Essenes understood that very clearly. They understood that the 77s were pointing to the coming of Messiah who would atone for the sins of the people. Just because the Pharisees were stiff-necked and the scribes were basically just Greeks, unbelieving Greeks, and they didn't understand. It does not mean there weren't Jews who did not understand it. There were Jews who understood that, and it very clearly refers to the Messiah, refers to the atoning of the Messiah, and the Jubilee and sabbatical years point to that. And to not touch that and not deal with that shows that you are, at the very least, not understanding the text to its fullest.
But is a week only one day, or is there more days to a week?
We know when the Jews say Shavuot that they use that when they're talking about sabbatical cycles and other writings like the Mishnah and other books, that when they use that term, that mean that, especially when it's applying to
Oh, and I said this earlier, but since others are listening, I'll say it again. The Essenes had Jubilee and sabbatical years in their calendar. And in a document they have in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they talk about after a certain Jubilee, the Messiah would come and atone for the sins of the people. And somebody has already gone through and calculated when that would be. And they were saying between 31 and 33 AD, the Messiah would come and atone for the sins of the people. That's because they understood Jubilee and sabbatical cycle years.
Jubilee cycles, that they'll just say sevens.
Okay,
and you just
yes,
naturally,
just because
and naturally know that, especially when you consider the context of the prophecy.
But just because that it says after doesn't mean that it's in the 70th week. It doesn't mean that. It just means
does
that.
Well, then what does it mean? Does after mean during or in? No, we don't use language like that. We say during or in when we mean during or in. We don't say the word after when we mean during or in or at the end of. After means that whatever became before it ended and that next thing started. Like at that point, it's almost, you're defending a tradition. And we humans tend to get very prideful and defensive with our traditions. And when that happens, we tend to say things that are pretty silly. And I think that's a very silly thing to say right there.
Mean though that it's not the 69th week. Okay, let's say it doesn't mean it's in the 70th week. It definitely means it's not in the 69th.
Where's the full 70 weeks then? Then we would be at 69 weeks because then a week would be missing then, Chris. A week would be gone.
How's a week missing? Because it says he gets crucified. He dies after the 69. After.
It says that 70 weeks are determined. No. It says no, therefore that going
I said Charles jumped in here too. So
no,
go ahead,
I
Charles.
just want to finish my point. I just want to finish it. Is that okay there, Charles? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, it says, know, therefore, and understand that the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And then it says, and after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the Prince shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and at the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And then it says, and he shall confirm the covenant. Okay, so if you want to make that the 69th week a part of the last week, then a week is gone. A week is gone, Chris. There's no 70 weeks. A week is gone. That's
Wait. All right. Hold on. That's super serious. Hold on. All right. So is she saying that if you make the content of the 70th week, which is found in verse 27, part of the 69th week, then it's just gone? Is that, maybe that's what she's saying? Maybe.
A decree. So if you want to take that decree and add it to the 70th week, then we're not in the 70th week. The decree is gone, because then that decree is explaining the 70th week, and then that decree has 2 verses. That's what I'm saying, Chris. A week is gone and there's no 70 weeks.
I'll let Charles jump in, but
Exactly. Wait. Okay. She's saying decree. What is she saying? Decree about the 77s? It's all, or 77s are determined. Is that what she's referring to as decree? Is she referring to this covenant here as decree? I'm gonna play that. I'm gonna play that again. I'm kind of lost. I'm pretty slow and simple though, so let's.
Oh, now I heard that, Chris. But now you keep saying after, right? But is a week only 1 day, or is there more days to a week?
We know when the Jews say shouts, it's not in the 69th.
Then where's the full 70 weeks then? Then we would be at 69 weeks, because then a week would be missing then, Chris. A week would be gone.
How's a week missing? Because it says he gets crucified. He dies after the 69. After.
It says that 70 weeks are determined. No. It says no, therefore that
I said Charles jumped in here too. So go ahead,
I
Charles.
just want to finish my point. I just want to finish it. Is that okay there, Charles? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, it says, know therefore and understand that the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And then it says, and after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the Prince shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and at the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And then it says, and he shall confirm the covenant. Okay, so if you want to make that the 69th week a part of the last week, then a week is gone. A week is gone, Chris. There's no 70 weeks. A week is gone.
Man, I don't follow. I really don't follow, because man, how? I mean, if she's saying verse 27 is the last week, if you put that into verse 26, then it's gone. I mean, I don't know if you guys know. Rewind it, okay? Because I am not following that at all. It's not making sense to me. All right, I'll rewind it one more time. All right.
Chris, is the 7 okay? Is a week only 1 day? Is a week only 1 day, or is it 7 days?
I thought I already went through this in my presentation twice.
Okay, you know what? There was arguing going on in the chat, Chris, that I was trying to attend to.
I said
please forgive me.
There's talking about sabbatical cycles. That's why they were in the 70 years of captivity.
Oh, now I heard that, Chris. But now you keep saying after, right? But is a week only 1 day, or is there more days to a week?
We know when the Jews say Shavuot that they use that when they're talking about sabbatical cycles and other writings like the Mishnah and other books, that when they use that term, that especially when it's applying to Jubilee cycles, that they'll just say sevens.
Okay,
and he just naturally know that, especially when you consider the context of the prophecy.
But just because that it says after doesn't mean that it's in the 70th week. It doesn't mean that. It just
it does mean though that it's not the 69th week. Okay, let's say it doesn't mean it's in the 70th week. It definitely means it's not in the 69th.
Where's the full 70 weeks then? then we would be at 69 weeks, because then a week would be missing then, Chris. A week would be gone.
How's a week missing? Because it says he gets crucified. He dies after the 69. After.
I would
No,
like.
it says that 70 weeks
No,
are
Charles,
determined.
I'll
No,
let you
no,
go,
no, no.
Charles.
It
Go ahead.
says no, therefore that
I
going
said
forward.
Charles jumped in here too. So
No,
go ahead,
I just
Charles.
want to finish my point. I just want to finish it. Is that okay, there, Charles? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you
Then
so
you're
much.
playing.
Okay, it says, know therefore and understand that the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And then it says, and after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the Prince shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and at the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And then it says, and he shall confirm the covenant. Okay, so if you want to make that the 69th week a part of the last week, then a week is gone. A week is gone, Chris. There's no 70 weeks. A week is gone. That's a decree. So if you want to take that decree and add it to the 70th week, then we're not in the 70th week. The decree is gone, because then that decree is explaining the 70th week, and then that decree has 2 verses. That's what I'm saying, Chris. A week is gone, and there's no 70 weeks.
I'll let Charles jump in, but I don't agree with that.
Do you guys follow that by chance? Because she said what seems to be contradictory things about a decree. But either way, whatever she means by it, whatever it is, we'll assume it's a legitimate argument. Whatever she means by it, if you understand it how I do, that the verse 27 recapitulates what 26 is saying, then it's a invalid argument. Especially since the verse 24 says 77s are determined, not 69 sevens. So it's really, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to have to hop off here and go do some things. I appreciate everybody who has been listening to this, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Grace and peace to everybody. God bless.